Disclaimer. All comments throughout the podcast made by Andy Garner-Flexner are Andy's own comments and not representative of studios past or present that Andy has worked for, Disney, Cartoon Network, etc. All comments and opinions expressed are solely Andy Garner-Flexner's individual thoughts and opinions. Now, shall we get this show on the road? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wide the world over the platform they deserve. I am your host, Nathan Ragland, and I don't know about you, but I am more than happy for today's episode. Happy. Today we have Andy Garner-Flexner, an animator who's a leader of the Queer Tag, or the Animation Guild, who's worked on several amazing programs like Adventure Time, Samurai Jack, Summer Camp Island, and Disney's Amphibia. This was a lovely and genuine conversation, and I hope you all get as much from it as I did, if not more. If you enjoy Andy, go support him with his links in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast, you can support it with a subscribe or follow however you consume your podcast, or go to the merch shop and enjoy some amazing designs. Pride Month may be over, but the pride doesn't stop, as all the Pride merch will still be up, and all the profits will still go to Lambda Literary or the Trans Lifeline. Get yours today. Also, if you want a place to talk about this podcast and others in the Apocalypse Podcast Network, consider joining our Discord server to talk about this podcast and others, send memes, and more with the link in the description below. In fact, let's hear about another stellar podcast in the Apocalypse Podcast Network.
Art and entertainment inspire each of us in different ways, but have you ever wondered what inspires the people who create our cultural touchstones? I'm Adam Unz, and on the Spark Parade podcast, I geek out with artists and entertainers about their cultural spark of inspiration. Everything from Shakespeare to South Park. You'll hear from artists like Connor Oberst on Northern Exposure, Roisin Murphy on Terrence Conran's The Housebook, and Adrian Young on Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. The Spark Parade, where artists reveal their cultural inspirations to spark the inspiration in you. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast. It's not recording any of that. Dang it! I was checking the levels, but I didn't record any of that. Which is fine. It's just fine. There we go. All right. Make sure I got that going. Let's see. What was I going to say? By the way, I will say we will definitely be mentioning, Tipsy Maria here and there, because she had a good couple questions to add on with the conversation that I think would be greatly appreciated more than anything else.
Perfect. I would love to answer them.
Absolutely. Oh, trust me, I make sure to try to do my research and have like a good, well-rounded group of questions. But Maria has really like shown up more than anything else, like helping me out with getting guests, with getting great questions, with merchandise as well. So
yes. Gotta love it.
Absolutely. I cannot thank her enough. All right, Andy, before we get started, I must ask the icebreaker question I ask for every single podcast. What is your most unpopular art opinion?
Ooh, my most unpopular art opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to be original.
Okay.
Chill.
Okay. Care to elaborate on that a little
bit? We are all on this long journey of being an artist.
Okay.
You are not going to be the best artist you're going to be at where you are right now. You're always evolving, always growing, always learning. So if you find something out there that you love, replicate it.
Okay.
And just download it. Just be like, why am I so drawn to this piece? And just look at everything about it, the values, the shading, the technique, the colors, etc. And try to replicate it. That's what artists for years have been doing. They've been replicating the master's pieces to try to learn their techniques and their colors. So when I say stop trying to be original, I don't mean don't do art that you like. What I am saying is do art that you like, and if it's drawing eyes, draw eyes 1,000 times until you know how to draw the best eye ever. And then you're going to be known as the person who draws eyes. And that's going to be great because that's something you love to do.
Right. I mean,
So just
I was gonna say
focus on that.
I was gonna say I totally get kind of where you're talking about, because it's one of those, like, as much as every artist out there tries their best to be original at some points, there are certain opportunities and there are certain circumstances for people that really specialize on a certain opportunity, and if you know that you're good at those opportunities, you should definitely go forth with those opportunities. Is that more or less what you're saying, or am I just putting words in your mouth at this point?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. If your forte is, if you love drawing buildings, and you're drawing buildings, go for it. Be the best craftsmanship of building construction that you can be. And you're going to be noticed if you share your love and passion out there with the world.
All right, then basically just stop being original. Is that a hill that you're willing to die on?
Sure. Yeah,
All right, then.
absolutely. If you try so hard to be original, then, good luck. More power to you.
There you go. More power
I love to get a folder of inspiration, and I drop things that I absolutely love, and then I explore that piece, and I'm like, well, what from this can I take and put into my own, and work with however I can work with it, And that kind of leads to originality, but I'm not on the search for originality. I'm on the search for what drives my passion.
There you go. I can't think of a better way to word it, and I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to subscribe or follow whatever streaming platform you prefer. I'm a part of the Apocalypse Podcast Network. Go to apocalypsepodcastnetwork.com to see more about this podcast and other amazing ones in the network. And follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PostmodArtPod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is an animator who's worked on shows like Samurai Jack, Adventure Time, and Summer Camp Island, who's currently the lead color designer for Disney's Amphibia. Welcome to the podcast, Andy Garner-Flexner!
Woo! Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
How you doing today, my good sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Trying to stay cool in the heat wave.
There you go. Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, before you melt away too badly, I want to go back just a little bit. I want to know the origin stories of Andy. What got you interested in art and animation in the first place?
Well, I'm from the East Coast of Maryland. And my whole family are artists.
Really?
My father is a professor at the college I attended. My mother does paintings and crafts, and I have two older brothers. My oldest brother is not only a rock star, he also does like screen printing, logo design, graphic design. He is amazing at that. And then the second older brother, he does pixel design, video game graphics, and pixel animation. So I've been raised on art. I literally have been surrounded by art my whole life.
Okay.
And I didn't necessarily knew I wanted to go into animation. I just knew I liked drawing.
I mean, it's a good start, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with like the family you're talking about, basically being born and bred into it more than anything else. And when did it for you go from like just being surrounded by that kind of stuff to like finding a love for it and then making it a passion and potentially your career?
So I always escaped the world through drawing. Whenever I needed a break from my mental and from anything happening, I would just escape in the world of my art and draw. And it wasn't until I got encouraged by a teacher who was like, "Oh, this is really good," that my mind kind of clicked and said, "Oh, that made me feel good. I wonder if I can keep exploring this outlet as something else." And my parent would either be like, "Oh, you should be like a doctor, or do something that has like not art because they've lived in art and they're like, we understand the struggle of it. We want you to be comfortable." And it wasn't until high school when I joined like art clubs that I was like, oh, I find a community here that I like, and people like what I do, and I really love anime and manga. So I mean, maybe there's something out there for me in my art passion.
There we go. There we go. Was what were some of the early animes and mangas that kind of inspired you to go further with this art pursuit, more or less?
Oh man. Well, when coming home from school and throwing on Toonami, the first things were Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, of course.
Yeah, fair enough.
Those were my go-tos. I'll never forget first getting Pokemon Blue. My brother got Pokemon Red. And we would play Pokemon while watching Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z.
There we go.
But from that kind of opened our world into anime, and then from there we watched Yu Yu Hakusho, Rurouni Kenshin. For me, I binge watched Bleach and Naruto. So those were my go-tos. Oh, and Outlaw Star, of course.
Yeah, I mean, those are all like great inspirations and great start, and something that definitely has a lot of heart to when you look back on those series more than anything else. More than anything else. In fact, speaking of that, I do have a question that I forgot to ask a little sooner, but this comes from my amazing producer, Maria, aka Tipsy J Hearts. I must ask possibly one of the most important questions I've ever asked on this podcast. Does your heart go boop goop or goop boop?
Ooh. Boop, boop, goop.
Boop goop? Okay.
Yeah. I think I had to like listen into my mind and be like, just follow the pulse, and I did it on each one, and boop, boop, boop seems to be the one.
There you go. Again, that was from Maria, aka Tipsy J Hearts. Thought I would at least get that out there. But since again, going back to like basically heart, but also like the inspirations or whatnot, all these amazing shows with Toonami, I imagine that partially led the way to kind of some of the first opportunities that you have. As I noticed in my research, you've had some of your first opportunities with Cartoon Network, with Adventure Time and Samurai Jack and such. How did those opportunities come up for you?
So during college, I needed to get a internship.
Okay.
And my oldest brother happened to do a favor to someone who was working in animation at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother was like, "Hey, my youngest brother needs an internship. What is it like getting an internship over at like Cartoon Network?" Because I was watching Adventure Time like many others and fell in love with it.
I mean, who wouldn't?
And right, that part. So I got into contact with my oldest brother's connection, and he was like, "Hey, give me your resume and portfolio, and I'll send it over to my producer, and we'll see if we can get you an interview for an internship." And I was like, at the time, I was like, "So, okay, I watch cartoons, but what you're saying is I can work on cartoons.
Right.
Is that right?" My mind didn't go there. My mind wasn't like, people make these. There's like names of credits of people. And I never thought that could be me. So having this option presented to me blew my mind and just exploded this fiery pit of passion to pursue this 100%. So that was my first in. And I also didn't just get in. I had to apply for this 2 years straight, like
Goodness.
4 semesters worth. And my connection was like, "Whatever you do, don't email the producer at this email address." And I said, "Okay, dear producer, my name is Andy." And I literally bugged the producer for semesters of school until she was like, "Okay, shut up, kid. Fine, we'll give you an interview." And this was tough because I was interviewing over the phone. This was before they did like Zoom conferences. So I had to like sell them over the phone.
Which I imagine for art and animation is kind of hard to do, especially if you wanted like visuals or something along the lines of that. But still, I digress. What was I gonna say? It's one of those, like, I can only imagine how you must have experienced like just that sort of realization that people actually worked on animation and such. I had that realization myself whenever I was getting into college. I was trying to be a filmmaker and such, and I guess it never really clicked for me until I actually was part of a Film and Video Society, like film club, more or less, and like working with like the lead person or the president of the club working on his short film made me sort of realize, oh, people do this. It's a reality. this is a great way to put my creative venture into, because I was gonna go for like sports broadcasting or something along the lines of that. So yeah, I can only imagine like how surreal that opportunity, and especially like actually being able to work on a show like Adventure Time must have been for you.
Oh my gosh, working on Adventure Time was a trip. That show is wild, and it was uh, the internship was really unique because I got to do a lot of things that are not offered for internships
Right.
now. Uh, I got to help with a Comic Con because I interned during the summer, so that's when Comic Con was happening. So I got to help with Comic Con and volunteer with someone who had a booth and get a free pass into Comic Con and attend the Cartoon Network panels. And I'll never forget this experience. That if this kid is out there listening to this, just know that I literally think about this often.
There you go.
I had my Cartoon Network badge out at the Cartoon Network booth, and a kid saw it, looked down at my badge, looked up to me, looked down at my badge, looked up to me, and held out his hand. It's like, "Hi, it's so nice to meet you." And I was like, "Oh my god, I feel like somebody." And that like made my whole trip at Comic-Con. Just that kid who felt encouraged to reach out and say, "Hi, I really love the work that you're doing." And I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing."
I mean, I you can correct me if I'm wrong. I imagine if you were in that kid's shoes and you saw someone that worked on something you love, you probably would be feeling the same way, I imagine.
I sure would, and I don't know if I would have had the confidence to say hi. But whoever that kid was, thank you so much for saying hi.
Absolutely. Hey, for all you know, he could be working in the industry right now.
That part. We could be coworkers.
You could be coworkers, which I think would be just the ultimate like full circle more than anything else.
It really would.
But speaking of full circle, as someone as yourself that used to work on, or that used to love like watching Toonami and such, how surreal must have been for you to be working on Samurai Jack when it was on Toonami?
Oh man. So I was working on Adventure Time during the Samurai Jack 5th season being produced at Cartoon Network. So the producer on Adventure Time was offered the chance to, at the same time, produce the last season of Samurai Jack. And I was a really hard worker, still am a hard worker.
Good.
And my producer noticed this and was like, "So I want to let you know I have this amazing opportunity that I'm going to be like producing this last season of Samurai Jack." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're amazing. Go get your things. Yes, please." And she was like, "How would you feel about doing the same?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And she was like, "How would you feel about working while on Adventure Time, work on Samurai Jack as well?" And my mind exploded because I got to work very closely with Gindi and Gindi's crew of misfits that he brings with him to every production he goes to.
Good Lord. I'm officially envious of you, because I would only dream to have like I would love to just at least have like a sit down conversation with any of them, especially Gendy. So the fact that you got to work alongside him throughout the process of basically wrapping up one of his most notorious shows more than anything else, like that, again, it goes back to what I said before. I can only imagine how surreal the entire experience must have been for you.
But I mean, I certainly had to get it because I have a job to do. I had to get over that feeling quickly.
Right.
One of the first interactions I had with him is he was at a scanner scanning drawings from his sketchbook, and I was like, "Gendy, what are you doing?" He was like, "Oh, I'm just scanning these." I was like, "Gendy, you have more important things to do. Give me that. I'm doing this for you." So I, took his sketchbook and I was literally scanning his drawings, and I was like, while I was doing this, I was like, la la la, doing my work, and then it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I'm holding Gendy's sketchbook and I'm scanning his drawings. And it was just so wonderful to get to know Gendy, and he's such a character. It was so funny. I would always leave his office and I'd be like, "Bye," and he would say it back, "Bye."
Hey, if nothing else, you're leaving a good impression on the guy, so.
You know what? I hope he does remember me. I'm sure he does, but it's been a while since Samurai Jack, that season wrapped 4 years maybe. 4 years ago.
I feel like
5?
that's about the time. I'm sure someone out there will fact check this.
Yes, please.
No, I mean, it's not like he's really slowed down anytime soon. I mean, with the Hotel Transylvania, now was it I forget what it's called, like the Unicorn Force or whatever it's called.
Yes.
Like,
I'm very excited to see what that looks like.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope that there's a time down the line that you get a chance to work with him again, because again, based on the experience you talked about more than anything else, like I said before, you used to grow up like watching this kind of stuff, and now you're actually like
Dexter's Laboratory,
yeah,
like Samurai Jack, and just those, like, especially Samurai Jack was such a huge inspiration to me. And being able to at least see the process of thought of how a creator like that goes through production was mind-opening.
Right. I mean, absolutely. Especially, again, someone as highly, I guess, prestige as him, like with all this creativity just flowing out of him every opportunity he steps into a room. Like, that's, again, I envy you, my good sir.
Thank you.
There you go. But of course, like, those opportunities as well, like, once that show ended, it's not like you could really end with the show as well. And you kept going, also working on, correct me if I'm wrong, Summer Camp Island as a color designer. Was that your first opportunity to be a color designer?
So while wrapping up on Adventure Time, the way that it goes is usually the producer and most of the production crew will jump onto some new production and show that is starting up.
Okay.
I knew Adventure Time like the back of my hand. I knew all 8 seasons and episodes and where models were, and it was a given that I should be on Adventure Time and wrap it up, because I just knew everything about it. So I stayed on the production, and I worked very closely, and I had a really wonderful relationship with my art director at the time, and she was working on Adventure Time and then moved on to Summer Camp Island and started ramping up that production. And I had already talked with her and told her that I am interested in getting into the art aspect of animation. And on Samurai Jack, I actually did something that I don't recommend people doing, which is I colored a prop for Gendy. I colored a couple things for him just to get it out of the way and get production done. And he was like, "Oh, you did these? Wow, these are great. No notes. Go ahead and ship it." And I was like, "Okay, thanks, Gendy," and like quickly did it. And then like it hit me. I was like, "Oh, wait, hold on. He just said that I did a really good job on making an art piece that was for his show." And then at that point, I was like, I think I need to pursue color design. So I talked with my art director, and she actually gave me some freelance to do on Adventure Time. So I got to do some freelance on Adventure Time, color design wise. I did some color design on the last 2 parts of the series finale, and I also did the color design for the Minecraft episode.
Okay.
So I had already like worked with my art director as a color designer. So by the time Adventure Time was wrapping up, or in post-production for the last couple of episodes, I showed her a test I did for Steven Universe color design. They weren't looking for anyone, but they were gracious enough for me to get some practice in and take the test.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh, this is really good. How would you feel about doing maybe some freelance on Summer Camp Island, just to see if you would be a good fit for color design?" And I jumped at the opportunity. Right. So I did color design freelance, and she loved it. And long story short, I jumped off of Adventure Time and started working as a color designer for Summer Camp Island.
There we go. Now, before we divulge too much into the conversation of what exactly you did, for those who may not know what exactly a color designer is, how would you describe it in layman's terms, I guess?
Sure. So there's a couple of design aspects that go into animation. Specifically, color design will work on the characters, the props, and the effects. And also, for example, if your characters are out on a sunny day field, they would just have a day color to them. But if they go into maybe a dark tunnel, they would look a little weird if they were just in a day palette. So a color designer will also do the palettes for these characters. So we'll put on a color temperature and a color styling to the characters, props, and effects when they need to be adjusted for the background. So pretty much anything that's moving on screen, a color designer had to touch and give the colors for those moving elements.
Okay. I imagine you guys probably work hand in hand with compositing and such, making sure that the color temperatures, the shadows and stuff all align perfectly to make sure that the shot in animation form is a little bit more lived in. Correct me if I'm assuming.
Sure. Compositor, we can substitute that with art director, because the art director will be really monitoring, and also color supervisor. Color supervisors do the same thing. They'll make sure that all of the color on our character, props, and effects, as well as the background, all go well together and look right on screen.
Okay. Take notes, animation people out there, because this is a very important part of the job. Let's elaborate on that a little bit. How important do you, at least personally, think color design is when it comes to animation as a whole?
When I tell you color design, there's a long history with color design.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and plug a Twitter account y'all should follow. It's called Color is Design.
Color is Design.
They have a lot of information in regards to how color design started, a really brief history. Color design was formerly known as color styling, or being a color stylist.
Okay.
That came from the ink and paint girls from the Disney films. So the ink and paint girls, that position of ink and paint was hired only for women because it was thought to be a, quote, entry-level position, unquote, and was heavily underpaid.
Right.
Because, of course, misogyny.
Yeah.
So fast forward, that job evolved with the technology and became color styling. And it was still undervalued and overworked and underpaid, and very much marginalized within the community of animation.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward into a more current time, the Color is Design group, the Color Design Committee of TAG, the Animation Guild, has been working very hard to get equal rights and equal benefits for color designers as their design counterparts. We, as color designers, work with anywhere from 50 to 200 files per episode. So we are coloring, giving colors, and creating, and organizing, and managing all of this work and being paid under to our counterpart designers.
Good Lord.
Color design is vital for production. In terms of organization, asset management, we also, when we're coloring these, we inadvertently are also checking the episode before it gets to the art director. So while we're coloring models, we're like, oh, actually, this file is wrong. And then we have to communicate with production saying, hey, I noticed that this model is drawn incorrectly, or is off model, or it doesn't hook up to the storyboard. Mm-hmm. So not only are we doing our job, but we're also checking the episode and the continuity of the episode and making sure it's a really good sealed package before being delivered to the art director and the showrunner.
Goodness, I never thought I would appreciate the people working in animation more than I already did, but hearing that entire history or something like that, it really opens people's eyes when you understand just all that goes into it more than anything else. So thank you for elating us with all that information. It is very much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. Hey. Color design should be very valued.
I imagine, like, color design, it's obviously, like you emphasize, a very vital part, and especially with the people that, worked on it, especially after all the years that you talked about with how marginalized and underpaid and underappreciated everyone must have been. Like, that's part of the reason why I wanted to have, like, this kind of podcast and such, to emphasize those people that are doing the important work and doing this amazing work to create something that people can consume in a amazing manner more than anything else. So thank you for raising that awareness more than anything else.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
And I mean, again, so you get these opportunities with, like, Sober Camp Island, all this incredible kind of stuff. Was there ever a moment to you to where, like, at least in this little like Cartoon Network era, I should say, to where you would say is like your proudest moment or like your most surreal moment, like working there?
Oh man, I think when I first uh, there was I think a lot of moments like that, and I
Okay.
think one of the most rewarding ones during my time on Adventure Time, we had a lot of Make a Wish children come through,
Right.
and I was kind of the uh, unofficial face of tours around Cartoon
Oh.
Network
Okay.
because of my bubbly personality and warm greeting uh, personality. So I was often the go-to person for these Make-A-Wish tours.
Okay.
And to see these kids make a wish to be see something that they love so much, like animation, and to just get to know it and be part of the crew for one day was so moving to me. To be like, oh, this is like more than just me. Like I'm doing some big work for someone else to have a really good day. So uh, that when I was able to give tours and foster a really supportive atmosphere for Make a Wish children that would come through to Cartoon Network, that was such a mind blowing. Like, oh, I'm like in the industry doing something.
That's very touching, and that's very sweet. I guess it really showcases more than anything else just how encompassing and how like just how awestruck and amazing animation can have impact on people more than anything else. Like it's more than just people loving a certain storyline or people appreciating a certain art style or anything like that. It's the fact that it could touch people and like make them feel comfort more than anything else. I mean, I imagine with what you're talking
Absolutely.
about, that was a major thought when it comes to those tours and such.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
And I can only imagine, working in the animation still, like, I don't know how much those have ramped up or slowed down, but I imagine, especially with your current position or whatnot, they might ramp up a little bit more working with Disney Animation, working on the amazing show Amphibia. How did that opportunity come to you more than
Woo!
anything else?
I it, I still don't believe it. So I was, minding my business at Cartoon Network,
Okay.
doing color design, and I got an email from the recruitment at Disney saying, "Hey, your portfolio caught the eyes of the art directors over at Amphibia, and we wanted to interview you for a position for a color design position." So I said, "Oh, cool, bet. I love interviews." So I wasn't planning on going because I really enjoyed my job at Summer Camp Island,
Right.
and I interviewed with them, and we talked, and we had such a great time. And before the interview, I like binge watched Amphibia, so I got to know the show. Um, and then they came back, and I was like, in my head, I had a number in my head, and I was like, okay, if they offer this, I'll go. And then they were like, hey, we loved your interview, and we want to hire you, and we were going to hire you at this number, and the number was much higher than the number in my head. And I said, oh God. So I went to a dear friend of mine who is also in the union, and I said, I was just offered this number. What do I do? And she said, think of a number that makes you want to throw up. Tell them, tell them that you want that number. And I said, is I was speechless. So I was like, hey, thank you for reaching back. And man, it's such a shame. I really wanted to be hired on at this point. And they actually worked with me and got a middle ground. And I was blown
Okay.
away by that. I was like, I can't. Uh, Fun thing about that, if you're gonna do that, that means you're going to leave. Do not when you return back with a counter offer. Don't do that if you're not planning on leaving. So
Right.
I did the counter offer and I was like, oh, this is a huge opportunity. I have to go. So I gave like a whole month in advance of being like, hey, I gotta go. I have a new opportunity at Disney. So that's the how I got into the House of the Mouse.
There you go. There you go. And I can only imagine with especially as amazing of a show as Amphibia is, and especially seeing like the different colors and such that goes into like a single episode alone. How's the experience been for you working at Amphibia compared to some of the other places you've worked at?
So Summer Camp Island, the palette is very unsaturated. A general rule of thumb that I carried with my color design on Summer Camp Island was that I generally don't go over 50% more saturation. All the levels are generally, there might be like one or two colors as like a high, like just as like a main color, a focal point color that goes over the 50%. So generally speaking, Summer Camp Island, unsaturated. Amphibia, very saturated. And also these frogs, wild. Like during the interview, I was like, because when I was watching Amphibia, I was trying to pick up on things that the production does and the color design does. And I was like, the one question I have is, how in the world are y'all deciding the inside mouth colors of these frogs? Because they are wild.
Yeah, it's something you never really think about, but go on.
Yes. That was a huge thing for me. So eventually I got accustomed to Matt's preferred colors for the inside mouth and things like that. So it's not even an issue now. It's very easy to do and very fun. But the switch has been very, very skill expanding. Working on that show, my skill has jumped through the roof. I literally the effects, the hyper anime inspired effects on that show.
Oh yeah.
Test my abilities of Photoshop. Absolutely. And just the monsters, the creatures, the backgrounds that are amazing. You're like, oh, these are amazing backgrounds. I need to do my colors to look so stellar. And just the character designs, the prop and effect designs that come out of that show really push you and drive you to do good for those. So it's been a wild shift of style, but I'm very used to Amphibia style now.
I mean, I would hope you're just at this point because you recently got promoted to being the lead color designer for this upcoming season. I did want to say that with like the hyper colorization that you're talking about, especially with the anime style, I imagine you probably had at least mentally a little bit of prep for it, because the fact that you grew up on anime and such. So I can only imagine like
you are absolutely right.
Yeah, I can only imagine like seeing how they go forth with their production and their colors and such. Like for you, it may have been a challenge, but certainly wasn't one that you weren't willing to tackle, seeing as you're still there at this point.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, after hanging out with Matt and the crew for so long and getting to know their taste of anime and shows that they like, I can, whenever I see an effect, I'm like, oh, I have a feeling I know where Matt's going with this effect. And I can go to like maybe like One Punch Man or like a really retro anime and reference how those effects were colored and produce something very similarly.
Fair enough. Do you know off the top of your head at least one of, or at least like a top 3 of his favorite animes or whatnot that he like loved and is inspired by the show?
Excellent question. Geez, I mean, other than like Sonic, Sonic's, I mean, anime Sonic, it's kind of like right there. But there's also some more retro, not like Gundam, but like Gundam adjacent shows and anime, like the mecha type of animes. And one that we both found a love for was Flip Flappers. It's a very not popular anime. And when I recommend it, I'm not saying it's a perfect show. There's definitely some things that are a bit cringy about it. But the visuals, ooh, and the animation, ooh, solid.
Something
Just
that's definitely
like,
above and beyond a standard anime, more or less.
When I say Flip Flappers, I want to put an asterisk saying I don't like 100% back the some things of it. If you do decide to watch it, just be on the mind. You're like, ooh, wait, ooh, that's cringe. Ooh, maybe a little inappropriate. Of course,
right.
All anime is like that. But I will say the animation and color design and just imagination of that anime, stellar.
More or less, the visual aspects of it are more of an inspiration for a show, not the contextual aspects.
Yeah. Very good way of putting it.
Exactly. More or less, just trying to make sure I cover your tail end. No,
Thank you.
And I mean, obviously, like with all these, different influences and such, and all these different colors, the how vibrant the show is more than anything else. Like it's one of the more amazing. Like Amphibia, at least in my opinion, is probably one of the most complete shows that's out there with all the different colors. Like the visuals are absolutely stellar. The story that is being told is one of the most riveting ones out there, especially the more that you go down the little rabbit hole that Matt is basically preparing more than anything else. Like, does it still blow your mind the fact that you get to work on this show sometimes?
Absolutely. Yes. Working from home during the pandemic has definitely shifted the ways that we produce the content.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is very much Zoom meetings and, talking on our messaging systems and whatnot. It is definitely different, but the impact is still there. And to see the fans, I have literally never worked on a show before where the fans do promo arts for episodes dropping. I have never seen that in my life. And I was like, oh, wow. The fan base on Amphibia, stellar. Like, y'all are amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine they probably showcased that a whole lot more with the whole entire finale fiasco with True Colors. I don't want to divulge too much.
Yep.
I was gonna say I don't want to divulge too much into that because for those that know the situation, I'm sure they'll understand. But I want to know, at least from a crew standpoint, how was your guys' reaction with everything that kind of went down with that?
Throughout the whole thing, we were very supportive of Matt and his vision,
Mm-hmm.
and also very much compliant with what needed to go down and happen. So it for us, we were always in support of Matt and always trying to be there for Matt, and because this is his show and his vision ultimately at the end of the day, and we just wanted to be like, we're here to support you.
Right.
So yeah, it really, the whole thing, and it was so heartwarming to see the fans trying to support us and being a support and just drawing more art and hyping up the show. For all of y'all who post on Twitter your Amphibia art, we see a lot of it. Like, this is like, y'all are talented.
Yeah.
If I get this quick side thing. I get a lot of people asking me, like, is drawing fan art of animation and shows like going to get you in the industry? No. There are a lot of people who do fan art of shows that they love, and the show creators see that and they're like, oh, your style is great.
Yeah.
Let's get you in for like an interview for something. So don't, and going back to the beginning, do what you love to do. If you do what you love to do and draw what you love to draw, people are going to notice that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those that talking about like the fan art stuff like that. That's something that I talked about with last week's guest, Roya Shahidi. Talking about like how people that she has known personally had done like fan art, and they've gone on to work on some of those shows. Like the example that she used, I can't remember the person's name, but like did Steven Universe fan art and then eventually got to work on Steven Universe. People that she worked with on her, or that they worked with on their Kirby Reanimated, eventually getting jobs in the industry because of the little like couple seconds animations that they did for that project. Like it's one of those fan art at the very least should be encouraged, because you never know where it can eventually lead you one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you talked about kind of this community, especially with Amphibia. It's an amazing one, but you're also part of another very strong community and such, and that's the LGBTQ plus community, especially when it comes to animation and such. You are a chair of the queer tag, or the animation guild as well. How, like, what sort of responsibilities come with that? How were you aware of like that little aspect of the tag?
So when I first got started in color design and starting through the union, I was super happy to be part of a union. Mm-hmm. Unions are amazing. They're for protecting the individual rather than the corporation. Mm-hmm. So when I was in the union, a friend of mine who is also queer, he was like, hey, did you notice that there's like not a committee for LGBTQIA plus? And I was like, oh, you know what? That's true. And he was like, one of my friends at a different studio had mentioned the same and was thinking maybe of getting a committee started. And I was like, bet. So we got a bunch of our friends who are LGBTQIA plus and brought them together and started just right there. We just started the committee meetings and just being like, what are things that we see happening in the industry that we want to improve for our community members. And from there, we started holding meetings and getting a community together and really getting to know one another who are in this industry. So that was really the founding of the Queer Tag Committee.
Okay.
And it wasn't until the pandemic hit that we made a Discord server.
Okay.
And originally, this Discord server, I just made it for the union members and made it as like a space for the committee to chat. And it wasn't really catching on too well. So a couple of the committee members were like, hey, we've had people in our community who are LGBTQIA who are not in the union, but maybe they're production staff or working at a non-union industry, and they want a community. What do you think about opening it up? And I was like, that's an excellent idea. So we opened up the Discord channel to people who are 18 plus years old and are of the LGBTQIA plus community, excluding allies in this because we wanted to create and facilitate a certain space.
Fair enough.
So we reached out and we put out the calls, and we have over 900 members who range from non-union to union to students to production staff to people all over the world who are together on this Slack channel or this Discord server.
Yeah, I mean, going back just a little bit, I didn't realize you were one of the people that basically helped create a committee for queer individuals in the animation guild. I guess it never occurred to me how recent something like that must have been. I figured it had been a part of the industry for like years, but I was obviously very wrong, considering if I come from the outside looking in. So it's incredible to know it's incredible to know that you're one of the people that is more or less like fostering this kind of like movement and representation more than anything else.
Yeah, I'm a co-founder of the committee.
Okay.
It was founded by me and a few others, some of which are still part of the committee today. And I've always been like in chair or president type of facilitating positions for LGBTQ groups. In my college, I was the president of it was called BT Glass at the time.
Okay.
It was the LGBTQIA group in college for building community. So I'm no stranger to fostering my community.
No, that's fair enough. I was gonna say, I know for me in college, I represent I identify as an ally when it comes to that whole entire spectrum or whatnot. Yeah. I was a part of what was in my college. It was GSA. It was in college called the Gay Straight Alliance, but they had since changed it to like Gender Something Alliance. I forget what it is off the top of my head, and I apologize for not remembering that. But still, the kind of community that goes behind that and the representation that should be out there more than anything else. Like I can only imagine how important it was. How important was it for you to not only have this kind of committee, but like to foster it to where it is now? Like how important is it to have that in this industry more than anything else?
It is incredibly important for the LGBTQIA communities to have close friends and family with one another, especially in times like these, where we are stuck at home, where we might not be in places where our identity is affirmed and respected. So it is vital to have these places where you can have a brave space to be yourself and to be witnessed and affirmed as who you are. And for the animation industry, it was vital to get the community together to say, animation, generally speaking, is very queer and trans friendly, but it certainly is not perfect. And there are definitely ways that we need to improve the situations, not only for current members, but our future members.
Right, right. I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but the fact that, more or less like animation, entertainment as a whole, but specifically animation, like it's a very interpretive art and something that should represent the audience more than anything else at the end of the day. And if there isn't that kind of representation that you guys have in the community that makes the stuff for that audience, then that message won't be translated as well as it should be. And I feel like it's important for you guys to have this kind of community to make sure that that kind of representation is there, not just for you guys, but for the audience that identifies with that kind of stuff, that is a part of that in one aspect or another. Correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth again.
Oh no, that's precisely right. We see these studios that want to produce stories that have, maybe a queer or trans person in the roster, or someone who is BIPOC, and in the industry, truth be told, the industry is still very much heterosexual, cisgendered white man. So to say that y'all want to share stories of queer people, trans people, and people of color, it's incredibly disingenuous when it's being told by cis hetero white people. Not to say that they cannot tell stories of these people, but if you want true, genuine stories, you need to hire and pay equitably the people that you want to tell stories of.
Absolutely. That there's no other way I could have worded that myself, but no, I mean, thank you for fostering this kind of community and for being one of the people to help like pioneer this kind of thing in the animation industry, because I can only imagine like how rough it must be, how rough it could have been for you at times to like make sure that these opportunities were there.
Oh, absolutely. I before I was in the union, I had terrible experiences expressing my gender at work. A lot of microaggressions, being sent to the head of HR because I was dressing too artsy, which is very coded language. If you are someone who is LGBTQIA in that community, being told that you're dressing too artsy is very much you're dressing too gay. So
I was gonna say, being told that you're dressing too artsy in an art-based field, I feel like that should be like the perfect connection ahead of time. I'm surprised that kind of stuff was pointed out.
So it was vital to be in a union where, when you're in the union, you dress and you express yourself how you damn want to be expressed and live. That's just a matter of fact. You have a whole union protecting you. And also, I'm lucky enough to be in California where we have generally really good protections for the LGBTQIA community. So it's a good place to be in.
There you go. And I do want to say, whenever you're talking about quote unquote dressing too artsy or whatnot, I've seen some of the styles that you've presented in your own personal art, and I can tell you right now, I'm surprised HR was focusing on it being too artsy and not too amazing with how you looked in some of that stuff. Seriously, that part.
I was serving looks, and then I had that experience, and then I went to my partner, and my partner was like, "Oh, that's illegal."
Yeah.
Go back there and tell them, and I did. And long story short, I came out of that situation more queer as ever, like more queer. I was like, "Oh, you have a problem with me now? Just wait."
Goodness. I mean, hey, it's a good thing that you didn't exactly back down from that situation, because I can only imagine some people being in that situation probably wouldn't have reacted the same way as you did. So I'm glad you stood your ground. I'm glad you're able to represent yourself in the best way possible, because at the end of the day, like, you're a human being. You should be able to express yourself in the best way possible.
Absolutely. And I would hate if anyone else had that experience. So I can't let me have that experience and not at least be an advocate for myself.
Right. And once again, I applaud you for for being out loud and proud of that more than anything else, and making sure that people understand that, you know, this is who you are at the end of the day.
Yes, thank you.
And like I was also trying to get at with the previous points, one was like with your personal art as well, you certainly don't hold back on that kind of stuff. Do you approach your own personal art in a different way as like the art that you make at work, like with some of your like self-portraits and such?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the things I do at work, I do my color design through a queer lens. And I, you know, talk to communities and I educate myself, and I am a white man, and I need to know how to properly color someone who has a darker skin complexion, and, you know, find out ways that are appropriate to best represent communities that we want to tell in stories. So it is important, vital, and necessary for me to do my research and do practice wide ranges of color design and wide ranges of people, and not just a bunch of white guys. Like, woo. Like, I need to be more diverse in my approach of color design and art, just to be the best artist I can be.
Right. Especially with Amphibia, not just, you know, with the wide range of characters that are included in there, with the wide diversity that there is, but also with some of the you know, to be blunt, the Toad characters, more or less, with the different colors that go with that one, but more or less with your original point, like the diversity that the Amphibia has when it comes to the human aspect, like it's certainly something else, and I can only imagine the amount of time and research goes into something like that.
Absolutely. It is key and vital. Matt, I want to do justice with him and the culture that he brings to the show. So I'm always hyper aware and hypersensitive of the color choices I use.
There you go. Since working at Amphibia, has there been a moment or a certain like color that you've been able to exhibit that you're like proudest of? Like you can show someone like basically a screen cap and be like, these are my colors. This is like the most amazing thing I've done on this show.
Ooh, excellent question. Let me pull up my website.
It's a good start.
I can't stress this enough. Amphibia has pushed my skill and ability immensely. When you're in so there's this thing that happens when you are working in animation. Generally, a year after working in animation, your skill jumps through the roof.
Okay.
You like excel skill wise, and like you'll see it. You'll look at your work a year later and compare it and be like, whoa, what just happened? So I think in general though, for Amphibia specifically, I'm still very passionate about doing these character palettes. So being able to set the characters and set the mood of these character props and effects within these amazing painted backgrounds and art direction for the shots. You know, whether it is the temple episodes, which are amazing and so fun.
Oh yeah.
Frobo going wild with all the all red palettes. You know, the very kawaii poses that we sometimes show, explosions, the second and third palette, those color palettes, or second and third temple, those color palettes were amazing to work on.
Oh yeah.
And of course, the season 2 finale. Holy smokes. that was the most work I've ever done.
Right.
And it was so rewarding because that pushed my ability to color design and the effects and just the color palettes, and that was a wild ride.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm very happy to say that I was privileged to do some of the more important models of the season 2 finale. If you're curious, I don't want to do any spoilers on this podcast, of course, just in case it's still pretty fresh. If you're interested, you can, you know, tune in.
I mean, it's on Disney Plus right now. Like the season 2 is on Disney Plus, so there you go. They can truly like experience like the different like again, the colors that you more or less brought to the table with just like, I know like the finale in particular, but just the show as a whole, especially with this past season, just like the variety of different colors and temperatures and all sorts of different kind of stuff you brought to that. And I assume you were rewarded well because, again, you got promoted to being the lead color designer. I don't need the information of what is going to be on it because that's NDA territory, and I don't want this podcast to be destroyed to the ground. But how has your responsibilities more or less changed from season 2 to season 3 at this point?
The responsibilities kind of it kind of stayed the same. But there's just more of a focus point of like leading the color front in a sense. I still do what is called a route sheet.
Okay.
And what that is I work with the art director closely, and we go through scene by scene, and I notify on a sheet that says what palette every scene is going to be. So like, scenes 1 to 30 is in day palette, and then they go into this cave for 10 scenes. So like scenes 11 to 20 will be in this cave palette, and then I have to work on making those palettes for the characters. And then communicating that with my other color designer. So it's a really, really fun task that is not entry level. Can't stress this enough. Right. Being color design is not entry level. Like, you cannot just fill in, paint by numbers this work. This is not, you got to know what the color of the light does to the local color of an object and how that looks on different shadows and the lights and etc.
Right, and especially with, again, like, especially with a show like Amphibia, to where there's just like a plethora of all sorts of different, again, colors and temperatures and stuff like that. Entry level is, putting it mildly, as something that you need a little bit more than just that when it comes to something like this. I did want to ask this a little sooner, but I totally forgot. This is also a question from, again, my wonderful producer Maria, aka Tipsy J Harsh. Is there there you go. Is there a color that you tend to like either accidentally or like is like the default color whenever you try to do a color palette, more or less?
Well, one of my favorite colors is like a mixture between lavender and periwinkle.
Okay.
So those two colors, like I'm like right in between there, that's like my favorite color, and I love that. When specifically for Amphibia, whenever I do my color designs, I keep in mind the environment, the tools and the resources, and just kind of the nature of the beast of Amphibia. So like, they're all frogs, and they don't have like metal and technology. Like, they don't have these like blue steel technologies, and they don't have these like, sophisticated like human-esque tools. So a lot of my colors skew toward more naturey, like green colors, to kind of reflect that the foliage is being used as the tools and things of that nature, and like for their clothes as well. So I keep in mind a lot of the story and elements of the story when I do my color design.
Okay. No, it's a good insight more than anything else, because I mean, especially again with the environment in that show, more or less, like that's always got to be at least top priority, making sure that, again, whatever color palette you're applying helps with making sure the animation seems very lived in more than anything else.
Absolutely, yeah.
There you go. Well, we've been talking about basically your entire animation journey at this point. Let's go to a little bit of a dream scenario, if I may ask. Let's say I am big shot Mr. Moneybags. I have connections to anyone and everyone in the industry, and I have more money than should be available in this world, for God's sakes. I come to you, I'm like, look, Andy, we love just about everything that you're doing at this point, making this stuff look absolutely incredible, and also the representation you have. We know that you could lead the charge on something absolutely incredible. If given the opportunity, what would be the dream Andy Garner-Flexner project?
Man, I mean, so my goals are, of course, I want to develop my own show. I have studied animation for 8+ years. I've worked in production. I know the production pipeline like the back of my hand. I've worked with the animation studios that we frequent. I am no stranger to animation. I am no stranger to storytelling, and I'm no stranger to the craft. So making a show would be amazing. But I'd also love to art direct, of course. But if given the opportunity you just presented, I would absolutely start a company. Like I would start an animation business.
Okay. No, I trust me. Again, I have connections to everyone. I got more money than know what to do with. We can make that animation company possible, and you can produce just about everything that exists in the world. So there you go.
Absolutely. It would go from I joke about this on my Discord server too. Oops, it started as the QT and animation server and evolved into the QT animation studios.
There you go. There you go.
So if I had that money, I would literally just make a studio out of my Discord server.
There you go. There you go. Though you might have to change the QT because I'm pretty sure like Quick Trip or whatnot might have copyright or registered on that, but still.
A fun thing about the name, I thought it was QT was very appropriate because we're all cuties.
Yeah.
So Cuties Animation Studio, perfect.
There you go. There we go. Well, let's go down from the dream scenario. Let's come down a little bit. Let's get back to reality for a little bit. Sadly, where do you hope to see yourself, say 5-10 years from now?
5-10 years. I hope I am just finishing up my series, having a toast, and thanking my crew for working with me to develop such an amazing series for everyone to enjoy. And who knows? I mean, from there, I guess either go into art direction or direction in general, or teaching. I could see myself doing some teaching.
There you go.
Or even still making more shows. There's not enough queer content. There's absolutely not enough. And whenever we get one piece of queer content, it is heavily scrutinized, not only by the people within the community, which is rightfully so will be, but also by people outside of the community. And then it's trying to be shaped into something for people outside of the community, since there's such a lack of queer and trans content out there. So there's such a shortage of this content. It's not a matter of we have to make the best queer and trans content. It's that we have to make queer and trans content by queer and trans creators, and very importantly, our BIPOC community members as well.
Absolutely. That's something that I see a lot more of when in the industry, but I also know, at least from the outside looking in, that there's still a long way to go, and you can probably attest to this. Mm-hmm. There's still lengths and leaps and bounds that need to be made before we get to that point. But I imagine with people like you more or less leading the front on that, it might be happening a little sooner rather than later. So
I'm trying my best. To be an advocate for change, of radical inclusion. A lot of people think diversity looks like taking the cream of the crop, taking the people who've had opportunities and have the money to go to college and get these educations and resources and giving them the jobs. What it really looks like is giving people money and opportunity for the resources and for learning on the job. And then also giving those mentors time and money to do the work and adjusting the schedule properly.
There we go. That's all. Hopefully we'll get to that point sometime in the near future. I at least I can only hope.
I hope so too.
There you go. Well, I just have one last question that I want to ask as we're winding down the interview right here. Obviously, like, you're heavily invested when it comes to art and animation and all different aspects of it. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
Art is, things like history and such. Art lasts forever. Or for a very long time, I should say, and leave an impression. And when you can't see yourself in art, it it makes you feel alone. It makes you feel like you're alone in this world. You don't have community, and art to me, as a queer individual, is so important to be able to see myself not only in animation and in shows, but just in the world in general, and in a positive and joyful light. I want to know that, you know, there's a lot of conversation happening about queer pain, um, and a lot of places want to show queer stories, and they just want to show the painful parts of it without any joy. And that's not the representation we need. We need to know that our queer and trans community members have happy endings and have happy and joyful stories. So being able to see myself reflected in a joyful, positive light is necessary for my survival as well as the growth and well-being of many people like me.
That was beautifully worded, if I do say so myself, and I can't think of a better way to word it as well. So thank you for giving your input on that. With that, that's all the questions I have. I've already showered you with some praise, but I'm gonna shower you with some more because it's my podcast. I do what I want. Um, Andy, I cannot emphasize how amazing it is for an opportunity for me to talk to you as someone that obviously is a major consumer of art and such. To be able to talk to someone that is so invested as you are with some of the stuff that is reaching out to thousands, millions of people out there is absolutely amazing for me. But getting the chance to actually sit down and talk to you and getting the opportunity to like hear your story, hear where you come from, what you're trying to do more than anything else, like it's absolutely amazing, and it's inspiring more than anything else. I also want to give an additional thank you for actually helping out the podcast in a more direct manner, because I believe, and you can correct me on this, when I was setting up for my newest merch drop, Maria, it was either you or someone probably in that guild or in that server had approached someone in there about different LGBTQ plus charities to potentially be a part of in one aspect or another. And with this recent merch drop, I'm donating all the profits even after Pride Month is done and over with. I'm donating all the profits to either Lambda Literary or the Trans Lifeline. So I want to thank you for
Yay!
I want to thank you for giving that input, but also, like I said before, with the story that you've told, with um, hearing what you've gone through, what you've had to endure, and hearing what you could do from here on out, I am going to be one of those in this strong community, more or less, that's going to be rooting for you every single step of the way, and I cannot wait to see what's next for you. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for the opportunity.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. That is so wonderful and kind of you. I'm so happy to hear that that you have the ability to donate when that you have the resources to do so. So that is amazing to hear. I also want to put out a disclaimer that I should have probably said at the very top of the podcast, that all of the comments that I say are my own. Okay. I do not represent the companies, Disney or Cartoon Network. My comments I say and share here are just my own individual comments.
I'll be sure to include a little something in. I do like a recorded intro before the actual podcast, so I'll be sure to include that disclaimer at the beginning as well. But also, I'll leave this part here in the end. Again, I'm trying to make sure you are covered because you deserve to have many years in this industry, and you shouldn't have a comment be the reason why you stop. So.
Oh man, that part. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. For people that might be curious on where else to find more about yourself and what you do, go ahead and plug yourself for the people at home.
Okay, so you can follow me on Twitter. You can look me up by my name, Andy Garner-Flexner, or you can just look at my handle it's OH_ hey with 3 Y's _ Andy. And a very similar one for my Instagram being oh hey Andy, but only one Y on the hey. So those are my 2 main outlets of art and happenings.
There you go. And also, you also have a website. People want to see more of the stuff you've worked on and such.
Yeah. My website, andygflex.squarespace.com.
There you go. And if you've missed anything, I'll be sure to link it down in the description below. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
I think just I want to express to people who feel that they might not have a community out there who are LGBTQIA plus, you're not alone. There are people who go through very similar thoughts as your own. If you are depressed, filled with anxiety, feel like you're at a loss, know that you are not the first nor the last to have those thoughts, and there is community out there for you. And I strongly encourage you to find that community and healthy spaces that will uplift you and really affirm who you are in this world. I also want to plug the QT Animation Discord server. It is open to people who are 18 plus and are LGBTQIA. We are not accepting allies, but y'all are important and we value you. The space that we're cultivating is just for people who are in the community. And if you are in animation or interested in breaking into the animation industry, and you fit all those qualifications, reach out.
There we go. There we go. With that, all I have left to say is for the people at home, hasta luego, mi amigos.
Tell me what's wrong, tell me sparks in motion. Sing me a song, tell me your eyes can all open. Show me it all, pick me up in the car you drove when you used to call. Show me it all.
Thanks for listening to the Apocalypse Podcast Network. For more great podcasts, go to apocalypsepodcastnetwork.com. And remember, every time you support one of our sponsors, you're supporting the podcast you just heard.